The lights inside the historic arena burned bright as the sound of anticipation echoed through the hall. It was one of those nights when the air itself felt heavy, thick with expectation. Fans from every corner of the world leaned forward in their seats, waiting for the first clash of heavyweight power. Cameras rolled, commentators leaned into their microphones, and the ring, square, silent, and unforgiving, waited for its warriors. Tonight's opening battle would not simply be a routine contest. It was a collision of two very different fighters, two different boxing philosophies, and two different journeys. In one corner stood Ahmad Mustafayev of Azerbaijan, a powerful and muscular fighter making his professional debut. At 32 years old, he was older than most newcomers to the professional scene, but he carried with him a burning desire to prove that experience in life and strength in spirit could still carve a path to glory. Across from him stood the towering Madiyar Saydrakhimov of Uzbekistan, a man with an impressive amateur pedigree and a reputation built on years of elite competition. Taller, longer, and technically polished, Saydrakhimov entered the ring with medals behind him and confidence in every step. For Mustafayev, this was more than a debut, it was a gamble, stepping immediately into deep waters against a fighter of proven international caliber. For Saydrakhimov, this was an opportunity to show that his amateur brilliance could translate into professional dominance. As the fighters were introduced and the crowd roared their approval, the tension built like a storm waiting to break. Two heavyweights, two ambitions, one ring. When the bell would finally ring, there would be nowhere to hide, nowhere to retreat. Only fists, heart, and the unforgiving truth of the fight itself. When the fighters finally stepped forward for the opening round, the contrast between them was impossible to ignore. Saydrakhimov towered over Mustafayev with a clear height and reach advantage, his long frame giving him the look of a fighter built for distance and precision. Mustafayev, by comparison, looked compact and powerful, his shoulders thick with muscle, his stance aggressive and eager to close the gap. From the opening seconds, Saydrakhimov began establishing the rhythm of the fight. His jab flicked out like a measuring stick, testing the distance, probing the guard of his opponent. Mustafayev tried to march forward, determined to oppose his strength early, but Saydrakhimov's patience quickly paid off. A sharp left hand snapped through the air and caught Mustafayev high on the head. In a flash, the momentum shifted. Mustafayev's legs stiffened, his balance faltered, and he stumbled backward into the ropes. The referee immediately stepped in and began the count. The crowd erupted with excitement as the early drama unfolded. Mustafayev had barely settled into the fight before finding himself staring at the canvas, forced to gather his senses. It was a dangerous moment, one that could have ended the contest before it truly began. Yet Mustafayev rose, breathing deeply, eyes focused again. Across the ring, Saydrakhimov remained calm, composed, and calculating. He did not rush recklessly for a finish. Instead, he continued to box intelligently, picking his shots and letting his experience guide him. The opening round became a demonstration of control from the Uzbek fighter. Every time Mustafayev attempted to charge forward, Saydrakhimov answered with clean counters, left hooks, straight rights, and carefully timed punches that reminded everyone watching exactly why he was considered the more technically polished fighter. As the fight moved into the second round, Mustafayev knew he had to change something. The disastrous opening had placed him immediately behind on the scorecards, and against a fighter like Saydrakhimov, climbing back would not be easy. This time he stepped forward more cautiously, his guard tighter, his movements more deliberate. For brief moments the strategy seemed to work. Mustafayev landed a solid left hook that snapped Saydrakhimov's head slightly and brought a roar from the crowd. It was a reminder that the Azerbaijani fighter possessed real power, and that a single clean shot could change everything. But Saydrakhimov's composure never wavered. He adjusted smoothly, using his reach to keep Mustafayev at the edge of his punching range. Whenever Mustafayev rushed forward, Saydrakhimov answered with sharp counters, particularly his right hand, which repeatedly found openings through the guard. The Uzbek fighter's boxing intelligence began to shine. He wasn't simply throwing punches, he was reading his opponent, predicting movements, and exploiting every mistake. Mustafayev's aggression sometimes turned reckless, and that recklessness gave Saydrakhimov the opportunities he needed. One moment even saw Mustafayev briefly complaining about a low blow while the referee had not called a halt. For a split second, he stood vulnerable, in front of his opponent, hands lowered, tempting disaster. Fortunately for him, Saydrakhimov chose not to capitalize on the opening. The round closed with Saydrakhimov still firmly in control, but Mustafayev had at least shown glimpses of resilience. The crowd could sense that despite the technical gap between them, this fight might still produce moments of unpredictable drama. By the time the third round began, the narrative of the fight had started to take shape. Saydrakhimov was the technician, the patient hunter controlling the pace with calculated precision. Mustafayev, meanwhile, was the relentless challenger, charging forward with determination, even when the odds seemed stacked against him. Saydrakhimov continued to dictate the distance with his jab, occasionally stepping in with stabbing shots to the body that slowly drained his opponent's energy. Mustafayev tried to tighten his defense, bringing his gloves higher and attempting to block the incoming punches. But Saydrakhimov's accuracy made it difficult. A clean right hand snapped Mustafayev's head back once again, drawing gasps from the audience. Yet despite the punishment, Mustafayev refused to fade quietly. He continued to push forward, throwing heavy shots whenever he found an opening. At one point, a powerful right hand from Mustafayev landed cleanly enough to briefly shake Saydrakhimov's composure. The Uzbek fighter quickly recovered, but it served as a reminder that the fight was far from over. As the round progressed, Saydrakhimov appeared to buzz Mustafayev again with a sharp combination. But instead of pressing aggressively, he remained disciplined. It was a calculated approach, breaking down his opponent slowly rather than risking a reckless exchange. The round ended with Saydrakhimov comfortably ahead, his technical superiority evident, but Mustafayev's stubborn resilience kept the tension alive. The fight was no longer just about skill, it had become a battle between precision and perseverance. Entering the fourth round, the toll of the fight began to show clearly on Mustafayev's face. His nose was bleeding, and the fatigue of chasing a taller, more elusive opponent had begun to sap his energy. Saydrakhimov sensed it. His punches started landing with greater frequency, and he began pressing forward with more confidence. A sharp right hand crashed through Mustafayev's guard, drawing more blood and visibly shaking him. The crowd could see the damage accumulating. Mustafayev's face grew redder with every exchange, and each breath seemed heavier than the last. Yet, something remarkable happened in that moment. Instead of collapsing under the pressure, Mustafayev found a second wind fueled by sheer pride. He continued to throw punches, even when his body screamed for rest. Saydrakhimov kept working methodically. Jab, right hand, body shot, step back, executing a clinical breakdown of his opponent. To many watching, it appeared only a matter of time before the fight would be stopped. Still, Mustafayev remained standing, his spirit refused to surrender. Every time Saydrakhimov landed a clean shot, Mustafayev answered with one of his own, reminding everyone that heavyweights always carry danger in their fists. The round closed with Saydrakhimov clearly in command, but Mustafayev's refusal to quit earned the respect of the crowd. In boxing, courage is sometimes as memorable as victory, and Mustafayev was showing plenty of it. Then came the moment that changed the entire emotional momentum of the fight. As the fifth round unfolded, Saydrakhimov appeared to be cruising toward a comfortable decision. He continued pressing forward, landing crisp combinations, and backing Mustafayev toward the ropes. But boxing has always been a sport where one moment can rewrite the entire script. In the middle of an exchange, Mustafayev launched a sudden right hand over the top. The punch landed clean, catching Saydrakhimov square. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Then the unexpected happened. Saydrakhimov went down. The crowd exploded with disbelief and excitement. The fighter who had dominated the fight suddenly found himself on the canvas. Saydrakhimov quickly rose to his feet, but the message had been sent. Mustafayev, battered and bleeding, had found his moment. The knockdown ignited new energy in the arena. Mustafayev pressed forward with renewed determination, throwing punches with desperation and hope. For the first time in the fight, Saydrakhimov looked slightly cautious, aware that one more mistake could change everything. The round ended with Mustafayev winning his first clear round of the fight, and suddenly the narrative had shifted. What had looked like a one-sided contest now carried a spark of uncertainty. The sixth and final round began with both fighters aware that the fight had reached its climax. Mustafayev knew he needed something dramatic, another knockdown or even a knockout, to steal the victory. Saydrakhimov, on the other hand, understood that staying disciplined would secure the win. Yet pride and adrenaline pushed both men into a tense final exchange. Mustafayev swung with heavy right hands, trying to recreate the magic of the previous round. Some punches missed wildly, but others forced Saydrakhimov to stay alert. Meanwhile, Saydrakhimov continued landing clean counters, reminding everyone of his superior technique. The two fighters traded punches in the center of the ring, sweat flying under the bright lights. The crowd roared with every exchange, sensing the courage pouring from both athletes. Despite his fatigue and injuries, Mustafayev refused to back down. But Saydrakhimov's control never completely disappeared. He maintained just enough distance to land his shots, while avoiding the most dangerous counters. As the final seconds ticked away, both fighters threw everything they had left. When the bell finally rang, signaling the end of the fight, the arena erupted in applause. When the fighters returned to the center of the ring for the official decision, both men looked exhausted but proud. The judges had watched 6 intense rounds of action, and their scorecards reflected what most observers already knew. The ring announcer raised his microphone and delivered the verdict, a unanimous decision victory for Madiyar Saydrakhimov. It was the expected outcome after his early dominance, but the story of the fight was richer than the scorecards alone. Saydrakhimov had demonstrated the boxing intelligence, patience, and technical skill that made him a dangerous competitor in the professional ranks. Yet Mustafayev had earned something equally valuable that night: respect. Despite suffering an early knockdown, a broken nose, and heavy punishment, he refused to quit. He even produced one of the fight's most dramatic moments by knocking down the favorite in the 5th round. In the end, the result belonged to Saydrakhimov, but the spirit of the fight belonged to both men. They had stepped into the ring, faced adversity, and given everything they had. And in boxing, that is the ultimate measure of a fighter's heart.